Hey, what's up, everybody? What's good? JB here, back with another CyberInsight live stream. We're doing day 14 of the Advent of Cyber, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about web applications and some basic vulnerabilities. If you want to get stuff ready to be able to jump into this, two things you got to do: hit the start machine right here, which is going to bring up our vulnerable web app, and then we're going to be using the attack machine, which you can just hit up here and get that started. So I'm going to dive into this. If you have any questions, throw those in the chat, hit those up. Appreciate it. If you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and all that other good stuff that comes with that. So yeah, let's dive into this. Let's see. So it is I'm dreaming of secure web apps. Elf McSkitty was sipping her coffee when she saw on her calendar that it was time to review the web application security. An internal web application is being developed to be used internally and manage the cybersecurity team. She calls Elf Exploit McRed and asks him to check the in development web application for common vulnerabilities. Elf Exploit McRed discovers that the local web application suffers from a IDOR vulnerability, which is insecure direct object references. We're going to see what that is here in just a minute. So what are we going to be talking about in this particular task? We're going to be looking at web applications. We're going to be talking about the OWASP top 10, which is a list of the top 10 most common web vulnerabilities. And then we're going to be going a little bit more in depth into IDOR. So just for a little bit of a background on what a web application is, it's a piece of software that can be that can use via web browser. So unlike computer programs and smartphone applications, a web application does not require any type of installation on the user system to make use of it. To use a web application, we're only going to be needing to use a web browser like Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Safari, things like that. There's a lot of advantages for a user to do this because of the fact that they only need a web browser. User can access a web application from a Microsoft Windows system, from a Linux box, from a Mac box. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the operating system they're on. As long as they have a web browser that can properly interact with that web application, then you're good to go. If the user can use a modern web browser, they can access the web application. They will always be able to see the same interface and enjoy very similar experiences, even with different systems. They can even access the same web application from a web browser on their smartphones, and their experience would only be affected by this screen size and what it can hold. So pretty much should be the same type of user experience independent upon the particular OS that you're using. Moreover, there are other advantages for a software developer. Instead of developing an application for Mac OS and another for Windows and a third for Chrome, they only need to build one and ensure it's compatible with all the different types of browsers. So you probably know these already. I mean, because we all use these different things, whether we're talking about online banking, different types of websites that we go to purchase things, Amazon, Costco, things like that, web email, Gmail, Proton Mail, as I mentioned, banking. You get into like some SaaS products as well, so like Microsoft Office 365, Google Drive, things like that. So when we're talking about web applications, it's always worth kind of talking about where these web applications store the data. Normally it's on a back-end database. So many of the web applications need to access large amounts of data. And this isn't necessarily a great practice to do if you keep that data housed on a server that's purposefully built to be a web server. Normally we want to use something that is scaled a little bit more and using proper database software so it can efficiently parse and provide back answers for a whole bunch of different types of data that the web application might be querying. So in order to find a solution to hold all this different types of information to read from it efficiently, that's why we end up using a database system. So the two types of database models that we normally talk about are a relational database and a non-relational database. In a relational database, it stores data in tables. Tables can share information. Here they give us the example of three tables: products, customer details, and purchases. The purchases table would use information that is in the product table. So it can kind of reference things back and forth between these different tables. In a non-relational database, it doesn't use any tables, and it might just store the data in a document, a graph node, or some other types. Normally it's a value, some type of value and key type of relationship. So you'll see, maybe a user ID and a username or something like that. Not necessarily, what's the word that I want to use here? Well, we'll dive into it here in a second. So generally speaking, web application needs to constantly query the database. For example, such information to search for information, add new records, or update existing ones. So one of the biggest problems that we're going to end up running into here is how do we ensure that the right person that has the authority to access information from this website and vis-a-vis access to data that's on the database, how do we go about doing that? And we do that through proper access control. So consider the case where you're using an online shop as a customer. After logging in successfully, you should be able to browse the available products, check product details, prices, and other things like that. There should be limitations to what you should be able to do. You shouldn't be able to see other people's baskets, for instance. You shouldn't be able to see other people's credit card information. You shouldn't be able to see other people's previous purchases. The reason that you aren't able to do that in a properly configured application or web app is because of access control. So access control is a security element that determines who can access a certain information or resources. After authentication, which we covered in day 5, access control enforces the appropriate access level. So you have to be authorized. Yes, you are who you say you are. Then after that, we're looking at what actual things do you have the rights to be able to see. In an online shopping example, we talked about a vendor should be able to update prices and descriptions for the products, but shouldn't be able to modify the information related to other vendors. A customer, on the other hand, should be able to view things, but maybe not actually edit or alter data. So this leads us to talking about the OWASP top 10, and this is a list of the top 10 vulnerabilities that we see across web applications across the internet. They do this every few years. I think they did it back in 2013, 2017, and then we have like the latest list. It's done via a survey, I believe. And here, let me bring it up. I think I got a link here. And we can kind of see what these actually are. So you see back in 2017, they had some stuff. They renamed some things, but these are basically the things that we most often see as issues with web applications on the internet. So broken access control, so not actually protecting access in the way that we would expect. The IDOR that we're about to look at, the indirect object references, would fall under broken access control because we're able to access something that we shouldn't be able to. Cryptographic failures really ties back to sensitive data exposure, right? So that is either not using the proper encryption or using encryption that could be cracked. Injection attacks is another very popular one. That's where you're able to input data into the way that you're interacting with the website to end up getting additional types of information back that you shouldn't be able to. Insecure designs is kind of a little bit of a more high level finding. Security misconfigurations. They should have one for like things that aren't patched properly. Let me see. Vulnerable and outdated components, right? So if there's vulnerabilities in software that's being used, identification and authentication failures, software and data integrity failures, not logging things properly and alerting on things properly, is security logging and monitoring failures, and server-side request forgeries. So these are the OWASP top 10. TryHackMe has a whole bunch of rooms that kind of go into individual things here and the overall list as well. So if you're a little bit more interested in that and specifically how you can either try to attempt these types of attacks or how to protect against them, then I would highly recommend going and taking a look at some of those other rooms that they have that covers that. So we were going to talk about IDOR. And let's see what they have in here for us. So IDOR refers to a situation where a user can manipulate the input to bypass authorization due to poor access control. So IDOR was the fourth on the OWASP top 10 in 2013 before it ended up getting rolled up under broken access controls. So let's look at some examples. So let's say we have this URL here and it shows a user ID and it shows us the value of what it is. And hypothetically, in this case, maybe we were able to log into the website with an account. and maybe this is us, maybe this is our user ID. If we can then go and modify this value here to another number, and it's able to pull up that data, then really what we have is an IDOR vulnerability, because us as a user, we're able to access other pages that we should be unauthorized to see. Another example here is they're requesting an invoice and generates a similar thing. Invoices, question mark, download, and then has an ID number for our particular invoice. Again, we could test for IDOR vulnerability here by modifying this to another number and see if the application allows us to view another user's invoice. And it doesn't just come down to actually seeing data. It also has the ability for us to change data. And depending upon where that vulnerability lies and what it is that we have the ability to change, that could be kind of dangerous. So here they're talking about allowing you to reset the password of another user. So for instance, let's say after logging in, a malicious user might start with a URL to change their password and replace their username with that of another. This might actually be a good way. We were talking about persistence the other day and how you might have one method that you use to be able to get in. The blue team might see that. So let's say maybe they shut down that account, but they leave this other account open, but this individual was able to actually change the password for this other account. So they now have another account to be able to get in and access the system. All right, so let's take a look at what they want us to do here within the attack box. We spun up the attack box and we also did the start of the machine. We can go ahead and copy this. We're going to go to this IP address and we're going to log in with the McSkitty credentials. And we're going to poke around and see what we're able to see, because they say that there should be a few IDOR vulnerabilities. We should be able to access profile pages of other users and maybe be able to see some different files. So this is pretty simple. Nothing too crazy here. Let's see what we got. I'm going to pop this open. Okay, so that was McSkitty, which you can populate that in there. And then it was dev test. Okay. Now we can see here that we see McSkitty's homepage, and we can see an office number and a mobile number. Now let's see if we can mess around, like they were saying, and change. We're just to change the user ID value here. Let's see if we can see 100. No, user 100 came back. Now we're doing this manually. There is ways to attempt to do this with automated tool sets that can make this go a little bit quicker, but that's not really the purpose of what we're doing. We're kind of just talking about the basics of IDOR vulnerabilities and how we can see these kind of in the wild. So we can see that we can go to a few different pages here. Admin McBlue. So what were they wanting us to see? What is the office number of Elf Pivot McRed? I don't know that we've seen that yet. So let's try 5. There we go. And the office number is 134. Okay. It says not only profile pages, but also stored images are vulnerable. Start with the URL of a valid profile image. See if we can find the flag. So this image here is going to have like its own URL. So we can copy the image location. And we can go like this. And then we can just modify this and kind of do the same thing that we were doing before. And we're just going to cycle through. Let's go back up. Let's refresh that. 103, 102. Not seeing anything yet. Let's go 101. There wasn't anything at 100, but let's just, there wasn't a user 100 anyway, so let's see. And there we go, THM closed the door. So that is the flag that we're looking for there. I'm going to throw that in here, THM. All caps. All right. So I said, do you like IDOR? They have some other rooms that are more dedicated to that. I also point you to, I have a web application pen testing playlist that has a whole bunch of stuff, goes a lot more in depth into a lot of these other TryHackMe rooms. The web security fundamentals is a good one. I'd say these two are super popular videos. This Burp Suite fundamentals is really, really good. Burp Suite is a tool set that they have to do automated web app pen testing. They hit a few web app stuff on last year's Advent of Cyber, so I wouldn't be surprised if we have a few more rooms that maybe go into that. But you definitely can go check these out. They might give you a little bit better perspective on some things, especially if you're interested in learning a little bit more about web app pen testing. But all right, so that is it. I appreciate everybody dropping in, checking out the stream. Hope you guys are progressing well through this. We've got, what, 10 more days, I think, something like that. So, all right, I will talk with you later. Have a good evening. All right.